there. Welcome to our last episode of 2019. For those of you who are watching or listening to this on the release date, this is the last day of 2019. So I would imagine for a good number of you, when you are watching or listening to this, it's going to be 2020. So let me begin by saying Happy New Year to everyone. You know, this is a fun time of year because we've processed 2019, but we're very forward thinking. And we have been wrestling with what we want 2020 to look like. And for many of us, we have set goals for this new year. And so this is an image that has helped me to kind of get my mind around goals and just the idea that you have this horizon before you, this canvas, if you will, of opportunity, but you've got a few things that you're keeping right close and up front that you are focusing in on for this new year. And so I've been thinking a lot about goals. I'm sure you have as well. And as most of you probably know, sobering fact, 92% of all New Year's resolutions and goals fail. And typically that is all within the first month. And so I've been thinking about goals and I've been thinking about their failure rate and how to make sure the goals that I'm setting do not fail. But even more than that, I've just been thinking about the idea of goals in general. Like, what purpose are they supposed to serve? What's our relationship to goals? Where can they be positive? Where can they be negative? And as I've been processing through this, I was reminded of an event about, 4 or 5 months ago. I had just gotten the new album by NF called The Search, and I was out for a run, and I was listening to one of the tracks, and there was a lyric segment that just caught my attention. And I was like, why is that so deep and penetrating to me? And so in July, NF released his newest album, The Search. And if you're not familiar with NF, he is a rapper. And I'm one of these people that I like all kinds of music. And I'm drawn to these artists and these songwriters who just in a very creative and compelling way can talk about the truths of life in just really helpful and at times raw ways that just connect to me. And NF is one of those such artists. And so I enjoy his work, and one of the songs that he wrote in The Search was what's simply called Nate, which is his first name. And it's a song of him speaking to his younger self. So Nate is at the end of his 20s, but he was speaking in this song as if he was talking to himself as a child and giving himself as a child advice on what to expect or what to anticipate in life. And so it's this really creative song, and in there, he's talking about goals, and it just captured my attention. So I want to give you the lyrics for that, but I'm not rapping this for you. It sounds a lot better rapped, but I ain't the one to be doing it. So here we go. He said, you might get a glimpse of happiness from your achievements, but what you'll learn as you get older, every time you reach one, is you'll just make another goal that doesn't lead to freedom. And what you're already probably picking up on here is he is saying, yeah, you might get some happiness from those achievements, from accomplishing those goals, but the nature of goals is that once you've accomplished it, you're going to set another one, and his last line, you'll realize it doesn't lead to freedom, which means that if it's not leading to freedom, it's a form of slavery, it's a form of bondage. And the reason why this just struck me so much is because I've recognized that there are lots of times that I've set goals, and because they haven't been the right kind of goals, or I've set too lofty of a goal, like I constantly feel like I am chasing it, and it's not something that I'm enjoying pursuing. It's almost something that I am frustrated in pursuing. And then I came across this quote from Tom Wright, N.T. Wright, in his commentary, Luke for Everyone, and he said something along the same lines. He says, this world thrives on people setting higher and higher goals for themselves and each other so that they can worry all day and all year about whether they will reach them. And if they do, they will set new ones, and if they don't, they will feel they've failed. Was this really how we were supposed to live? And it's like we just keep tracking these goals, but it can be so exhausting because if we don't have a proper relationship with goals, then it can have a negative impact on us. And I believe that is a big reason why 92% of our goals fail. It's on the one hand, we haven't come up with the best goals or the right kind of goals. And two, we haven't executed them well. Now, in this episode, I want to talk about the former. I want to talk about setting a certain type of goal or setting goals that are the right goals that we should be setting, not so much on how to execute them. But I want to give you a resource pertaining to goals and execution that I think will be super helpful to you. It's by John Acuff and it's called Finish. And he wrote this a couple of years ago. It is brilliant. Hands down, the most helpful resource I have ever read on achieving goals. And this is kind of my guidebook for executing the goals that I have. And so I would highly recommend this to you. I will link this under the video at walkingthetext.com, and you can take that from there. So we're going to now talk about goals and the kind of goals we should be setting. And what's really cool is that we get to use the parable of the rich fool to drive the conversation. And for those of you who've been following along, this is our fourth part in this series on the parable of the rich fool. This is our final episode on the parable of the rich fool. And as we have done in all of the other episodes, I'm just going to read through the parable, highlight some things. And for this one, we're going to highlight the end of the parable. We're going to pull in some Gary Burge, and then we're going to put all of these implications together and talk about where do we go from here with our goals. And so Luke 12 is the only passage that this shows up in. Here we go. Someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." Jesus replied, "Man, who appointed me a judge or an arbiter between you?" Then Jesus said to them, "Watch out, be on your guard against all kinds of greed, for one's life does not consist in an abundance of possessions." And then Jesus told them this parable. The land of a certain rich man yielded an abundant harvest. And he thought to himself, "What shall I do? I have no place to store my crops." And then he said, "This is what I will do. I will tear down my barns and build bigger ones. And there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul," remember from our last episode, suke or nephesh, "Soul, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry." But God said to him, "You fool, this very night your soul will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? And this is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich toward God." Now, I want to look at this right here, where Jesus has on the lips of God in the parable, "This very night your soul will be demanded from you." So this is what Gary Burge writes about this part. He says, "This very night God will take back what he had given to him, his life." The expression used here, demanded, is used in Greek for repayment of a loan or stolen property. His life has been on loan, a gift from God, and now its use is finished. And the newly built barns with their contents, they are lost. So what Gary is getting at is, as he's interpreting this parable, he is saying that Jesus is challenging his audience to recognize that everything this man had was a gift. And we talked about that a couple of episodes ago. And we've talked about how everything in life is a gift. Every breath is a gift. Our very lives are a gift. The ability to even acquire wealth, the mental capacities, the opportunities, all of these are a gift from God. And now this man is being called to account, if you will, and his focus has been on the wrong things. And so now the very thing that he was given has now been taken away, and it's like a reckoning has taken place. And when you begin to look at this story and you go, okay, whatever this man's focus was, whatever this man's, goals were in life, they were wrong. They were the wrong goals to have. They were faulty. You could say this, the rich fool's failure is due to his faulty focus. All right, say that 10 times fast, Dr. Seuss, right? The rich fool's failure is due to his faulty focus. Friends, if our focus isn't right, then what we do is going to be wrong. I would just say this as well. I just say for so many, the focus is on ourselves rather than on God. And that's the problem with the rich fool in this story. We talked about this in the last episode. My goods, my grain, my barns, my crops. And then he equates that with his soul, with my soul. And his focus is on acquiring and possessions and achieving and status. And God goes, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, you're totally missing the boat. Your focus is wrong and you're failing in what I've asked you to do. And for many of us, this is where our failure lies, is a focus that puts too much on us and not enough on God. Now, just looking at that and reading that can feel very cliche, and you go, okay, so what does that mean? Well, let's take this a little bit further. Jesus' last words are, "This is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich toward God." And Gary Burge does a great job of unpacking this. He says, the saying enjoys a symmetry that is lost in English. A translation that strains English but retains the sense of the original might look something like this. Thus, it will be for 1, those storing up for themselves, and 2, those not making riches for God. So you see how he's delineating 2 points here. 1 is I'm making it about me, and 2, I am not making riches for God. So it's not a both and. It's like, well, you're just doing it for yourself and you're not doing something for God. And then he takes it a little bit further and he says the issue is not whether a person is rich toward God, the usual translation, but whether he or she is contributing to a wealth valued by God. People choose either to enrich themselves or to enrich their relationship with God. Now, this is one that I'm going to leave this up for a few seconds because you might want to read that again. It's very deep, but I believe the implications are very significant. Because what I believe Gary is not saying here is that the only way in which we are rich towards God is just by giving, more money to God. Now, one of the things that we do see here in the book of Luke is that a few chapters earlier, Luke is going to tell us that there are a number of women who are following Jesus. And then in Luke 8:3, it says these women were helping to support them out of their own means. And so there's this fascinating piece in Luke where these women are using their financial resources in order to fund something that they believe in and that they believe God is calling them to invest in. In fact, Jesus is able to do his ministry precisely because some wealthy folks that God had blessed with their finances were now channeling that wealth and those resources through the ministry of Jesus so that God's kingdom could advance through the work of Jesus and his disciples. Now, I believe that is a significant part about how we are rich towards God, but that's not the only means by which we do that. I believe that the other main way, or not even really the other main way, it makes it seem like, well, you either got to give money, you got to do this, but that we think about everything we do in life as a way to enrich our relationship with God. And one of the things that we find is that here in Luke 12 and in all the teachings Jesus gives, they're always in the context of the kingdom of heaven. And we talked about this in our Lord's Prayer series where heaven comes here. That was part 4. We talked about the idea of the kingdom of God and how it was the rule and reign of God advancing here on earth, pushing out the chaos and the brokenness and instilling shalom or restoring wholeness, shalom. And we talked about how that in the Lord's Prayer, when we pray every day, our Father who is in heaven, holy be your name, your kingdom come, your will be done here on earth as it is in heaven, that we get to join God in that process and that we all have this realm of influence and that what we do has an impact on people's lives. And so the thing that we were challenged with in that series, and particularly that episode, was How do we take our little kingdom and orient it to God's kingdom? How do we take our gifts? How do we take our talents? How do we take our opportunities? How do we take our influence? How do we take what we have and use it in such a way that God can work through us to advance His kingdom here on earth as it is in heaven? See, friends, that's what I think the point of all of this is that as we think about the things that we want to do, as we think about goals, the issue isn't whether or not to set goals. The issue is what kind of goals we are setting. And as we kind of look at the landscape in front of us, and as we start identifying the goals that we have for 2020, the question is, what kind of goals are these? Are these goals that are meant to enrich us? Or are these goals that if we are effective and we can accomplish it, then we will be leveraging our gifts and our abilities and our talents and our resources in such a way that God goes, oh yeah, you're investing in the kinds of things that I see as valuable and I can use to impact your life, but to impact others' lives through you. See, friends, that's what I believe that this is getting at. That as we think about our goals, think about them in terms of setting rich goals. Not about how we make more money, but how are we rich towards God in everything we do. In our generosity, with our finances, how we use our finances, what we choose to buy and choose not to buy. But also, how are we leveraging the gifts and the talents and abilities that we have in order to be rich towards God, to enrich our relationship with God, to grow in our obedience to God. Because as we do so, we're orienting our kingdoms to God's kingdom. And God can work in us and God can work through us to impact the entire world or our entire realm of influence. And I hope that this series has been so helpful to you as you just think through possessions, as you think through where our focus needs to be, and may we be recalibrated to what God desires from us in our lives. And so thanks so much for watching, thanks for listening, and may you walk out this parable well in your lives.